and welcome to this, the additional recording for week 8. I'll have to apologise in advance. I'm feeling a little bit under the weather. I think I've got the advent of a cold coming on. However, we'll forge on nonetheless. What I want to talk about today is the additional activities which are at the end, I put under the category of workshop as usual. I like to do a recording so at least people at home, as distance students, that you get an opportunity to look at what sort of activities we do in the classroom. Now, if you have a look at slide 18 in the PowerPoint for week 8, I've put an activity up there that is principally for cradle case students. The reason I've qualified that in that way is that the actual activity involves students going down to the library on the larger campuses such as Sandy Bay and Newnham. Because of the number of students and also the demand on the library, it's much more difficult for them to go and do library tasks actually within the time frame of a workshop or a lecture. Anyway, the activity that I've set for my students, because I'm on the Cradle Coast, is to choose one of the questions that I've put there, and as you'll see, most of them are based on social sciences type questions and topics. These are kind of areas that I'm interested in, particularly things relating to deviance and such like. Not necessarily that I'm a great fan of deviance, but I find it interesting the way human beings choose, I guess, how they choose to operate in their lives, and what they see as normal and other people don't see as normal, I guess. Hence the concept of deviance from the norm, as they say. Anyway, what I get my students to do is, if you'll have a look on slide 19, I get them to break down the question that they've chosen into 4 main categories. One being topic, so okay, what's the central topic that they're meant to be looking at? What's the focus of that particular topic? What's the instruction, so actually what do they have to do within the context of the question? And what's the viewpoint, or the possible viewpoint that they could take? And what's the viewpoint of the question, obviously, which is far more important. Once they've filled these out, we then move to slide 20 and look at developing a research plan, and that plan itself, as I've said in other lectures, we go from general sort of information about a topic, including things like definitions, all the way down to more specific information which relates or pertains specifically to the essay question, and hopefully it's the latter, the specific information, that'll obviously give us an answer to the question that's being posed. Students then get asked to go down to the library to find 2 quotes that would help them actually answer that particular question. I guess really it's an exercise of planning rather than output. So the quotes, I guess, are incidental, except for one thing, that they're actually sent out to do that activity. So it's finding actual information that goes towards answering a question. So I guess even though it's kind of secondary to the whole process, it's still important in the sense that they go looking for information, and that, particularly in this unit, obviously is paramount. Now, by the end of the lesson, so they've gone down to the library for half an hour or so, by the time they come back, it's my hope that they'll have, first of all, a breakdown of the essay question, or deconstruction of an essay question. Then they construct a research plan, so I want to look at that as well. And like I said, secondary is the quotes they get from the library, but at least they've been searching. The alternative activity, if you have a look on slide 23, is obviously projected towards the other campuses, and it's really an in-house or in-lecture activity. Students have to consider 2 statements or 2 sources, one being about poppy production in Tasmania, which is an interesting source, and I'd recommend you look at the whole source if you get an opportunity. I've put that in the distance folder. And also whether high schools in Tasmania should be extending their, I guess, provision to Year 11 and Year 12, which is interesting within itself, particularly when you consider rural schools. And for us, places like Queenstown, etc., anywhere down the west coast, they may have a good case to actually put forward for having Year 11 and Year 12. Now, the point of this exercise is simply to get people to look at a source, in this case 2 sources, hopefully generate some questions about those sources, I guess, with the hope that they can actually come to some sort of intelligent position about what's being suggested in the sources. but also to do an analysis of their questions and also what may come from those questions. So essentially, we're looking at people obviously generating questions and then delivering them to the class, so to speak. The class look at those questions, make judgments about them, whether they're analytical or descriptive, and what are the differences or the boundaries between those two types of questions. And also, I'm kind of interested to see whether a question has the scope to actually genuinely explore a topic. All of these things, I think, are partly connected to or geared towards your third assessment. So looking at how you analyse or how you generate your own question, then analyse it, and then see what sort of scope you allow yourself within the bounds of your question to explore a topic and whether it's actually satisfactory. By all means, use the models that I suggest here, maybe as I guess a template for trying to work out whether whether the work or the questions, etc., that you've presented for your third assessment, whether you think that it actually meets the criteria, and that's always at least a good starting point. I mean, personally, I think if you're having difficulties or you're actually a little bit confused about your question and about the topic you're actually going to explore, I think it's worth discussing with Julie, who's the distance tutor, and getting feedback from her about what perhaps is the best course, best way forward. Anyway, that's enough from me. Have a good week. See you later.